This episode of Out of Spec Reviews is brought to you by Magna. More on that later.
Hey, welcome back to Out of Spec. I've got Kyle here, and we're doing a new kind of style video / podcast of just talking about the cheapest EVs for sale. This style in particular, we'll talk about luxury cars, like the best EV luxury car to buy, the best EV truck to buy. It's kind of a deep dive, talking head style commentary where we can discuss things with each other and hopefully get your comments below on what you think of this and whether you agree or disagree with everything we're talking about. So, again, this is the cheapest EVs for sale in the US, brand new. You can, of course, buy used. Now, in this market, this is May 2022. It's a hot market for used cars especially. But we're talking new cars, which in some cases can have a tax credit to help out with that. Now, that is somewhat controversial too, because, we'll start right off with the tax credit talk, because that's not a guaranteed full value you can get. If you don't even owe that much on your taxes, then you won't get that entire amount. As of right now, it's $7,500 for most manufacturers. Now, Tesla and GM have run out of their tax credits, so they no longer get that incentive. But other cars still have the incentive, and sometimes they overhype it as well. Like, they will list the price of the car on the website with an asterisk and says that includes the tax incentive. So, Kyle, rant.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right in your explanation. I think our current tax credit doesn't help the people it should help at all. So here's the thing. The tax credit's designed to make EVs more affordable. This video, we're talking about affordable EVs. I think we live in our dream world of Lucid Airs, Model S Plaids, Rivians, Hummer EVs, Range Rover, whatever it is. Like, we're living in a dream world, and we need to bring it down to earth sometimes. And when we talk about the $7,500 federal tax credit on an inexpensive EV, it's important to remember that not everyone can take advantage of it. The thing here is the $7,500 federal tax credit is off of your tax liability for the year. So if you don't make enough money to owe the government, or if you have other credits or other things going on, $7,500, you can only use up to the portion that you can claim, and then the rest blows away as dust. So if you have a tax liability of $4,000, well, you just lost $3,500 to the wind. And so, in my opinion and impression, if we're going to have tax credits, which could be a whole nother topic, I'm actually not for them. I don't think they're needed anymore. But if we are going to have tax credits on electric vehicles, it should be cash on the hood. Everyone should have an equal opportunity to take advantage of it, and it shouldn't be something that only people who make enough money to qualify for the whole thing should have advantage to. So just going into the cheap car video with the understanding that it's not going to benefit anyone. Also, Jordan has some connection issues, so he may pop in and out like that from time to time. Nothing to worry about. It's also important to remember when we start talking about these cars, because we're going to have them broken up into chapters with some B-roll, and you can scroll around and look at each car, and Jordan will present it and we'll talk about it. It's important to have context as to the cheapest combustion cars. The thing is, I think there's a lot of shaming going on the internet and just nasty comments where, like, people are buying new inexpensive cars. They're like, why didn't you buy an electric car? And the thing is, there's such a massive gap in the new car market from a inexpensive transportation device known as a car, the cheapest car, to then all the way up to the cheapest electric car. It's $10,000 or more, right, Jordan?
Yeah, and that's twofold, because there are, way more used options of gas cars extending back decades. So if your budget truly is single-digit thousands, that is, pretty much gas only. There's almost no way to get an electric car, at least in this current market. And also new, like you said, as of today, you can get a Chevy Spark for $14,595. That's the cheapest new one, at least we can find, mass market anyways. And then there's the Mitsubishi Mirage and Versa. Because the Spark is being discontinued, I feel like we should mention those. The manuals, very cool, manual base at just over $16,000. So that is definitely a significant disparity underneath the cheapest electric cars.
Yeah, like so much disparity that not even the running costs are going to make up for that.
Yeah, and it is something to consider. Like electric cars can have running costs. They could have all the tax credits. They could have state tax credits. We won't even get into the state ones because there's so many variables there. I mean, 50 states basically, and they all do kind of their own thing. So yes, in a perfect world, you could get a Nissan Leaf for about the same as a Mitsubishi or a Nissan Versa, its sister cousin car, but that is not guaranteed, and it really
If you make
depends.
enough money to qualify for it. And then the other thing we need to consider here too is maybe, and I'm not stereotyping anything, but it's possible that a larger percentage of people shopping the cheaper EV market may not own their own home with a garage to have the luxury of putting in a charging station. DC fast charging your car out in the public is actually, and I have to do the calculations, and I am going to do a video on this, I think it's more expensive than filling up with gas. Maybe not with today's prices, but certainly it was when gas was, $3 a gallon or something like that. So you're not actually saving, depending on the situation, all that much money with an EV. So just going in with full context.
Yeah. So I don't know. Shall we dive in?
Let's dive in.
Great. So
this episode is proudly brought to you by Magna. Magna is a mobility technology company that is super unique because they touch every aspect of almost every car in the market, especially a lot of electric vehicles, and they even can produce vehicles from the ground up. Now, you may remember I shot a series just recently testing some of their new electric vehicle powertrains, so stay tuned for a lot of Magna content to come. We're going to be going in depth with some really interesting topics with these guys, and Out of Spec wants to thank Magna for sponsoring this review and tons of other videos to come right here on Out of Spec. We look forward to working with Magna to define and find out what the future of mobility looks like.
Kandi EV is the first one we wanted to mention, almost as like a initial bonus because, I mean, have any of you heard of it? Maybe you have, because one of our biggest videos was Kyle driving the Kandi EV, which was at the time like the cheapest car you could buy in the US. Super cool. We liked it. But can you find out how to buy it? And then also their website doesn't really have a whole lot of information, and it says like the pricing, although I think that's including tax credit, but they don't even tell you that. So
it's all so sketchy, isn't it? So we drove the Kandi K27, which they also have a K23, which is the bigger, more expensive one, which should have the lower number.
Agreed.
The K27 is the cheaper one. And honestly loved it. Really enjoyed the driving experience. We had such a laugh. I was like, we could just crash into stuff. Who cares? I think they advertised with the tax credits for Colorado, it was like $6,000 or something like that. And again, I shouldn't be the one after that rant using tax credits in my numbers, but that's the number that sticks in my head. I want to say it was like $17,000, something like that, before tax credits for the early ones, and then like $20,000 after. But, under $20,000 car, and, certainly was highway capable, didn't have fast charging, but was definitely one of those, like, I bought it on Alibaba and then rebadged it when it came over here situations. Since I made that video, the company's email addresses don't work. I can't get a hold of them on the phone. They've never invited us back to come review another one. And I'm in the Kandi enthusiast pages because I'm fascinated by this car. I really want a cheap Kandi to rip around in, and no one knows anything. Someone spotted one on the back of a truck in New Jersey recently, was like, oh my God, how did you get one? I think they're selling a neighborhood electric vehicle version that's capped at 35 miles an hour. And then I heard of someone tuning it back to max speeds. I'm not sure if you can get full speed on the highway in the neighborhood version legally. I just don't know what's going on with Kandi. But at the end of the day, it just seems a little sketchy. You can't really buy them. It's just a first car bonus for the beginning of this series. And I think the rest of the cars are cars that you're going to be familiar with, that you can actually buy, that are mainstream. And that's really the genesis. But had to throw the Kandi in there for some fun. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I would love to drive it. Kind of jealous you got to drive it, because what's the chances of me tracking one down, like you said? Side note, how many enthusiast groups are you in on Facebook? You should tally those up someday.
A lot. I like a lot of weird cars. Nissan Murano Cross Cabriolet enthusiast group is definitely my favorite. though.
Yeah. So yeah, speaking of cars, you'll probably know, let's talk about Nissan Leaf. That was one of the first ones, fairly innovational at the time. And then we actually had the newer one recently on review, which I did a video on, just seeing, is it still innovational at all? Here's a secret, it's not really, but it's
Yeah,
still,
save yourself the half hour.
yeah, still cool. Although ours was pretty high spec, so about 40 grand. Yours makes no difference with that beautiful sunset orange or whatever they called it,
Yep.
blended right in because we had it during the fall at first, so that was awesome.
We
But you
had
can,
that orange one a few times.
yeah, you can get the entry level one for $27,400 before tax credit. So that's strategic because that makes it just barely under 20 with that federal tax credit that they're banking on. It is interesting that it's been out for nearly 10 years and they haven't hit 200,000, which is the limit for the federal tax credit, in case you didn't know. So the Leaf, what do you think?
Well, run through the numbers. What are the prices?
For the base Leaf,
Yeah.
27,400. And then it jumps up like 10 grand for the SL Plus, the bigger battery pack.
Sure, which
So
is 62 kilowatt hour versus 45, I think.
Yeah, so the base one, you get about 149 miles on a charge, EPA, so that won't even quite be highway necessarily. And it doesn't charge that fast, although I did see, I think, 75 kilowatts. So that's
on
decent.
the big battery.
On the big battery. So yeah, it is economy car minded. It feels like a Versa on which it shares a platform. So it's nothing fancy.
We owe the Leaf a lot of credit. They ultimately, were early on. Nissan, very big into EVs back in the day. I think we've just seen a total failure of innovation from them since the Leaf came out, in my opinion. Still using Chatamo on one of their mass market cars. I get they're a Japanese company, and Japan's really the only country where Chatamo is going to live. You buy one of those today in the US, you won't be able to road trip it in a few years. Chatamos will be gone. And so, as an around town city car, I actually like the base one. I think for the money, there's no question. It's the cheapest new electric car on sale with 150 miles of range. That's actually not bad. I had a friend that I recommended one to. She bought it. She needed a very fixed cost of ownership. She found the free chargers. The local Nissan dealer had a Chatamo for free. It worked for her lifestyle. And I don't think you can ever fault someone for buying a Leaf because they work, they're reliable, they have plenty of space. They're actually pretty quick. It's not the most inspiring vehicle to drive, but if you're like a college professor, you probably already own one.
Yeah, it's great. So that's the cheapest, at least easily available one. Next up would be the Chevy Bolt EV, which is $31,500. Again, this is all as of early 2022. That one is not eligible for the federal tax credit. I guess they have hit their 200,000 mark. It's not actually their first EV, is it? GM. They had the EV1 way back in the day, right? But this is their first mainstream EV. Now that EVs are a normal thing.
And we're into the Gen 2 version with the full redesign.
Yeah, nice redesign. You have the Bolt EV and Bolt EUV. But yeah, just a hair over 30 grand. That's a totally reasonable price, especially for a small CUV. Granted, it's not very big, keyword small. And I don't know. I don't love the infotainment, but it drives decently. Like, it's a decent car.
Think about that price difference from the Leaf to the Bolt. We're talking the Bolt doesn't qualify for any tax credit. And I don't agree with the way the tax credits run, but if you look at overall cost, the Leaf can be had new for an overall cost of, with taxes and whatever, about 21 grand by the time you pay sales tax on it. The Bolt is $10,000 more.
Yeah.
That's
like, a lot.
Okay, I'll just rent a car the one time a year I got to go on a road trip territory, The Bolt, I really highly recommend to a lot of people. I've driven the redesign multiple times. And I think the other thing is they have a lot of dealership incentives, cash on the hood, things like this. Maybe not during this crazy hot car market time, to compensate for not having a tax credit. And in my opinion, that seems to work pretty well. The Bolt itself is solid. It's fun to drive. The redesign is a much nicer exterior and interior design, in my opinion. And, if you're looking for an inexpensive electric car, it works. There's a couple things that I don't like about it, and that would be DC fast charging speeds are abysmal in the Bolt. 50 kilowatts. Like, I know people will comment, it's like 50 or 55 kilowatt peak. Like, I've driven my Bolts across the country. It's like, wow, sorry that took you so long. It's just not meant for it. But the nice thing is, it works for the 1 or 2 times a year you do have to take a trip. And so, budget some extra time. It's going to be obviously reliable, proven car from a drivetrain perspective. I really think the used markets, we're going to do a whole nother video on used EVs and stuff, but I really think the used market is one to keep an eye on with the Bolt, because everyone's freaking out about these batteries and the fires, and they're putting new batteries and everything. I'm like, get a Bolt without a battery replacement, drive the piss out of it. If it burns down, just great. Insurance claim. Maybe some of you don't think that way. If it doesn't burn down, brand new battery pack. So, that's not a bad deal in my opinion. I'd run that thing into the ground and delay my appointment for a new battery for as long as possible. I just would not park it in my garage.
Yeah, 100%. I think the Bolt's an acceptable option. The next one, though, is not acceptable in any way, at least according to you. The Mazda MX-30, affectionately known as the worst EV of the year. That's what the video is titled at the end of last year.
Worst new car of 2021, I think.
It was rough because it's 33,470. It's fairly low or high on the list depending on how you look at it, but it's inexpensive. It qualifies for the tax credit, but what do you get for that? It's like worse on paper in almost every capacity, even than the Leaf, I think.
Yes.
It charges at 35 kilowatts, 100 miles of range, if you're lucky, if you're not doing any sort of performance driving, which,
right.
I mean, yeah, who does? But
it's a Mazda. It's a performance brand. We love Mazdas. You own a Mazda. I've owned Miatas. I recommend Mazdas. I'm a Mazda guy. I get in their electric car. I'm like, here we go. We get, what's their Japanese ethos thing called?
Jinba Itai, so horse and rider becomes one, and that's
like I didn't even know there was a horse attached to this car. It was so bad.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a driver focused car. Like Mazda's ethos is, you can't take the sports car out this weekend. Well, at least you can take a fun, exciting family hauler around, which this is not really good for that either. It's got the kind of suicide doors like the RX-8 had. Nice interior, like love the material choices. Good looking interior, good looking exterior. According to me, some people hate the exterior, but it shares a platform with the CX-30. Hence the MX-30, but it's just not a great car. But then again, they didn't even make very many, and I think it's more of a California compliance type thing.
Doesn't MX stand for Mazda Experimental?
Maybe I should really do more.
It's a
Mazda
bad
research.
experiment. Yeah, not a good one. I think they made like the identical number that they needed to satisfy CARB requirements for California. So they knew it was a pile of garbage.
It's the epitome of a compliance car where they're literally just like, okay, how do we comply? Okay, go do that. I don't care what.
Right. They're like, let's put the cheapest battery we can find, have this dude program it to work. I will say, there were things that I liked about it. It's just like compared to anything else on the market, it was slower, it would charge slower, it had less range, it was more money. And then just the way Mazda presented it really put a downer. And that doesn't play an impact on my role, but I was like, wow, even Mazda hates this thing.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
No.
But it's fine. Could be better.
It's not fine, and it should be better. You're way too kind to it.
I'm picturing me back in my hometown. You saw my hometown, very small. If I had home charging, had to go run 20 miles worth of errands in a day, that's the only place it would work. So next up is the Mini Cooper SE, which our friend Mike affectionately owns for now anyways. And did that price go up recently? Because I found it is now on sale for $33,900. I thought it was a bit cheaper before.
I thought it was 29 something when it went on sale.
I think it was. So they've hiked that up a bit, although they've also added a couple new things, extended the range ever so slightly. It's still not a long range, about 114 miles, but that is more range than the MX-30, and it charges a little bit faster, and it looks more interesting, It's just like a little better in every single way.
So here's the thing. I hate the MX-30, but I love the Mini Cooper SE.
And
And
they're
I
not
think
that different.
I know. But here's the thing. The Mini is premium. It drives
Yes.
well, and it's not trying to be something it's not. The MX-30 is definitely not a Mazda, and it doesn't drive like it, and it's not honest to what
Yeah.
it should have been. The Mini is a small, fun, quirky car that's fun to zip around in, great handling, really good drivetrain control. We know it's proven it'll last a long time with an i3 drivetrain essentially backwards. And it actually is range is one metric, charging is another. It does charge at a peak of 50 kilowatts, but holds it deep into the pack.
Yeah.
Whereas I've taken them on road trips and they're fine. It's not, something you would want to do all the time. And certainly if you do a lot of mileage, a Bolt would be a better option, I think, than this. However, if you're looking for that city car, then it's fine. The problem with the Mini is it's a cheap car for rich people, which means it's compromised in ways that won't bother someone who has another vehicle.
Yeah.
And it's always been that. It's always been a classless vehicle. You could roll up to a really expensive restaurant in a Mini, valet it, and it looks right at home, or you could have it parked out back of an apartment or at a high school. It just is a car that works for anyone. No secret, I'm a Mini enthusiast. I think the car's worth the money. I think it's really well put together, and it's not a good only vehicle to have, though. So while I do love it, I think you need to recommend it for rich people and not in the same ethos as a cheap car, if that makes sense.
So just $100 more than the Mini Cooper SE is the Kona, the Hyundai Kona Electric at $34,000. Also platform shared, front wheel drive. What do you think of that? I mean, you spent time recently with the white one, which was the refresh, but you spent a lot of time with the pre-refresh one, right?
That's right. And I've driven every version. I've compared the versions. Actually, the Kona helped launch a lot of our YouTube channel stuff. So I really, because that car was just coming out as I was starting to make videos, and it was sort of relevant and people started watching. And that was the first time I felt that our videos ever helped in a buying decision to someone. So the Kona is a car that I think, is very close to our channel. And at the end of the day, the Kona is absolutely a platform shared vehicle with combustion engines. However, it's magically efficient. You get great range. You well over 300 miles in the city if you're driving that. Like my dad's owned 2 or 3 Konas, and his would say like 360 miles, 330 miles on the Guessometer on a full charge. I'm like, wow, what do you drive it? Like, you pulling this thing around with something else? They're magically efficient. On the highway, not so much, but that's okay. It is the first car on this list that requires no excuses. The Leaf uses a dying charging standard and chat mode. There's an excuse. The Bolt charges pretty slow, 55 kilowatts, kind of plasticky interior. What came out of the Bolt? The MX-30, dreadful. The Mini Cooper SE, well, it's an inexpensive car for rich people. It can't be an only vehicle. The Kona is the first car on the list that's like, yes.
What is the charging speed on the Kona?
77 kilowatt peak that I've seen.
Decent, yeah.
It's fine. It's totally doable. I've road tripped them from New York to Florida, from Connecticut to halfway across the country. Where did I go? Kansas City. I can't actually remember where I went. And it was a wonderful driver. Great technology in the higher trims, but I actually really think the standard one was the way to go. It has everything you'd need. I really did enjoy that car. And first car on the list that I would have no issue recommending to most people.
Yeah, it really is a good car. It's a good economy hatchback. And the back seats, like most economy hatchbacks, are not the greatest. But at the same time, how often do you need them is the question. A lot of people buy a 3-row SUV because they're like, someday I'll have kids, and it's like, buy the car you need now.
It is very small in the back. That's the problem with it.
Yeah. So now we're going to take a price hike a bit. So we were at $34,000 with the Kona. Next up is the Kia Niro EV, which is $39,990. So
wow, that big of a price gap for the same platform.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a bigger car, and I guess you're paying for more storage capacity. I mean, that's what a lot of people do. Is that we have so many different CUVs, SUVs in the market, so it's like pick a size and it's available. This is basically I don't know. Would you say the first like proper size CUV on the list?
Yeah, they're
Everything else has been
very
small.
very popular here in Colorado.
Yeah.
Mostly because they have a Lyft program where if you drive for Lyft, you get to drive a Niro EV. So you see them like run out of charge everywhere on the side of the road because people don't know how to drive electric cars, which is hilarious, but not a good image for a Leaf for a passenger using Lyft for the first time. I guess you can rent them as a driver. I don't know. And yeah, very similar to Kona, a little bit different battery pack supplier, but similar specs. Motor, I believe, is the same. Architecture is pretty much the same. They're sister cars, really. But the Niro is definitely bigger, and I would say not worth the extra $5,000. I didn't know it was that much more. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, it's quite a jump. And I guess I had it's slightly out of order because the next one is the F-150 Lightning Pro. That's what's called, right? Which is
Yep.
$25, no, $15 cheaper than the Niro.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so 39,974. Ford was so proud of having this pickup truck. I mean, this is a huge step up as far as the car you're getting for the money compared to these other cars. This is a full-size four-door F-150 electric. Granted, not a huge range, but decent.
Actually, very good range in my opinion.
Yeah, it's rated for 230, right? Although
230 in the EPA cycle.
yeah, we haven't done our full testing with it, but that's really impressive. It
Well, they
charges.
rated it with max payload too.
That's right. Yeah. So it should do really well, honestly. And it charges at 150 kilowatts or around
The
there.
standard pack is what I heard secretly 150 kilowatts, 170 kilowatts for the big battery.
Ooh, yeah, that's helpful actually.
So I just drove this truck, just made a whole video about the Pro because I thought it was an insane value. The problem is no one can buy one. And
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's on the list. Ford deserves the credit. They're making it, they're selling it. People were able to go through the reservation process and obtain the truck. So it qualifies. The problem is they're just building so few of them for the general car market. Now, in 3-4 years, when they catch up with demand and everything's good, then hopefully they'll keep that price around. I genuinely don't know how they're making money at it. Putting a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack, 2 motors, 775 pound-feet of torque, a luxurious F-150 with big screens and everything on top of that for 39 grand. That's again before the tax credit. This is $32,000 with the federal tax credit overall cost. It's an insane, astonishing value, and big props to Ford for doing it. It really lights the fire up under anyone else, where like a Mini Cooper SE is only a couple grand less, right? Like, come on, $7,000 less for a little tiny city car, and you're making a whole pickup truck. It's the deal of the century. If you can get one, I will be scouring dealerships to try and buy one as soon as possible at sticker.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of dealers will probably have markups because basically they're going to sell every single one they can make and then some because they literally can't make enough. Their plan with the Pro was massive fleet sales. So even if they don't have a huge margin on that truck, they're aiming to make the money in the masses.
Yeah, they're going to be like, I'd like to order 500 of them.
Yeah. It could be so rad.
Yep.
So yeah, it's super cool. It didn't get the limelight like the major F-150 Lightning with the third tier and fourth tier, Lariat and Platinum. Those get the full light bar across the front and the big Mach-E.
XLT gets it too.
Oh, it does now?
It's just the rear that you need to get the Lariat and Platinum for.
Nice. So they changed that since I went out and saw them, which is cool. That's even better.
I prefer it without the light bar.
Yeah. It's a little cheesy, especially
it looks
when
a little cheap.
Up close in person. It's like, this is not very good plastic.
Yep, agreed. It looks super dumb. So hopefully they change that in like a refresh and make it like integrated and a little bit more premium.
Yeah, exactly. But I was like yeah, forgot this truck would be on this list because that's such a good deal. And it
It
currently
is.
has a tax credit, although they're selling a lot of Mach-E's and a lot of Lightning. So
It'll
that,
be out by the time anyone can get one in the next batch.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
So
there is a tax credit, fade out. But at the end of the day, like if you can buy one at sticker, just buy it because full size trucks, even on the used market, aren't 40 grand for like a nice one.
they
And
they hold their value like crazy. My dad bought a 2012 F-150, so it's 10 years old, 150,000 miles. It was still almost 20 grand.
Yep,
I was like, holy cow.
yep.
Um,
You'll never get hurt on this truck.
all right, so next up is the Kia EV6, which I
Really?
love. Yep, starts at with the rear wheel drive, $40,900, which is really, I'd say, a pretty good deal. I think that car is another heck of a bargain. It's the cheapest eGMP chassis car, so the Hyundai Genesis Kia platform that they're developing all their electric cars on now. So it's almost like the successor to kind of like the Kia Niro and Hyundai Kona type of thing. It's the first ground up platform from that group. And I love it. I mean, I drove it out from, or helped Ahmad pick his up from Chicago and drove it down to Dallas. Great road tripping car, charging monster. I mean, this is the first car on this list to be over 200 kilowatt charging.
Well, we don't know that because this is with the small battery pack.
Oh, right. So may not.
Yeah, it's a 58 kilowatt hour pack, right? I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yep.
So a good chunk smaller than the standard 77 kilowatt hour pack. So may not charge as fast. I bet it will still charge quickly, but we don't know. We haven't really done testing with the base one. If you're in Colorado and have a base one, let us know because we want to do stuff with it. Rear wheel drive. I've heard, now I haven't driven the rear wheel drive, but Ben has, and someone else.
No,
But yeah.
he's only driven the IONIQ rear wheel drive.
Oh, that's right. So slightly different.
Yeah.
But Kia EV6, polarizing styling a bit, but it's
a bit ugly.
Yeah, I like it for the most part.
I think I like it the less and less the more I look at it. But styling doesn't matter. That is one heck of a package. For the price, you're getting literally all the higher voltage stuff. I don't know what the voltage of the 58 kilowatt hour pack is. It's definitely not 800. It's going to be proportionally downsized, I think, proportionally downsized. And what a great driving experience, the right size, vehicle to load functionality. That is not only the first EV you don't have to make excuses for, that's the first desirable EV on this list.
Yeah, most people, I think, would desire it at least a little bit, depending on the price. At least I do. That's one that I think a lot of people have considered and will consider. I think so. The base one, what's it called? Light, or
I don't know what the terms are in the Kia lineup.
Yeah, they're a bit more confusing. I know IONIQ is just SE, SEL. That
Right.
makes a bit more sense. But and I think the mid trim is just above 45,000 or something like that.
I don't know. Can you get the mid trim with the small pack though? Don't you then have to upgrade to the 77 kilowatt hour pack?
I think you do. So it jumps the price quite a bit.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. But this is a good way to jump into this platform.
I think it's worth every penny. I think you won't get hurt on resale because like all those big box trade-in companies like Vroom, Carvana, they won't know the difference in the battery pack size. They're just going to be like, oh, EV6, 50 grand.
Yeah.
Probably make money on it.
I just looked it up. So the light trim is the base one, and then it steps up to the wind trim, which is then 47,000. So that is a significant jump up. Just for bigger batteries, some nicer things inside too. But yeah, 58 kilowatt hours. Really curious on what it's going to do in our range test. So let's shift it over to what we were recommending as a good cheap car, and we still are, the Volkswagen ID.4. It's a car that we've really liked since the very beginning, and they've continued to make updates to things like the infotainment. And this is the rear-wheel drive one we're talking about, which is absolutely decent, and it's actually a really quite sizable car. I feel like I can fit a lot more in it than the EV6 just because of the sheer size. EV6 is kind of squashed a little bit, which makes it look good, but I think the ID.4 is slightly more usable. And unlike the EV6, they're not pretending to have a frunk. they just like, nope, no frunk.
I mean, yeah, front trunk doesn't weigh into my decisions. But here's the thing with the ID.4. I was super hot on the ID.4. Still am. Still recommend it to a lot of people. But it was the first big boy EV. You know, big charging, 125 kilowatt, big range with a big battery pack. Really, really comfortable to drive. Good build quality. Great driving dynamics. Wasn't fast in a straight line, which like people who only know acceleration were annoyed at. All the other stuff was awesome. Really love the ID.4. I like the base trim. I've driven the base trim across the entire United States. That video is done really well on Out of Spec Motoring. And that was the car of choice to recommend to almost everyone because it was the first time we had a proper electric SUV under $40,000. And the starting price, now it's gone up a bit, but the starting price of new was 39 something on that. And I was just blown away that they could produce such a high quality, nice product for that much money. Then the EV6 and IONIQ 5 and other things came along, and it's like, wow, that's like a whole nother jump. The ID.4 just got leapfrogged in terms of charging technology, in terms of acceleration, in terms of everything in just a 1 year period of time. And, you know, it's a little bit, I would say Volkswagen Group took maybe the right or wrong approach, I don't know, of developing a platform that worked during the time when they engineered MEB. Hyundai Kia Group engineered eGMP for the future, and it shows.
Yeah, I really want to know what's the future going to be for MEB, and are they going to rename the platform? I mean, we're getting to this new point where it's going to be like second gen platforms that work ground up EV, which I think is fascinating. Personally, I love MEB. I love everything they've done with it. And there's plenty of cars we don't even get here in the US. I'm still hoping they do like a Beetle convertible on the MEB at some point.
Yes.
You know, that would be so great. I'm sure our friend in Fort Collins with the Beetle we see all the time. Shelly, yeah, that's.
Do you want to explain who Shelly is?
Yep, we started going to the office and we'd see this. It's a white Beetle with the license plate Shelly, and she apparently has the same commute pretty much every day. So.
Which is interesting because we don't have a timed commute, but we saw her like every day for like 3 weeks.
Yep, that's pretty funny.
And I recently just saw a brand new 911 992 Carrera GTS cab. So I guess and license plate Shelly. So I think she ditched the Beetle and got a better Beetle.
Exactly. Still a Beetle. Way better.
And it's bright red. It's like she went through a midlife crisis and bought a new Porsche.
Speaking of red, I do like the new red on the Volkswagen ID.4.
Yes, in the Pro S gradient trim only. So you got to get a maxed out one though.
Yeah, but the base. So the base starts at $41,230 now. So a little bit more, but still a great price, honestly. There's still, like we said, plenty of reasons to get EV6 and IONIQ 5. But this is just a slightly different car for a different buyer.
Yeah, and maybe less of a road tripping buyer. If you don't take road trips, I would have the ID.4 over EV6 or IONIQ 5. I like the size. I like the looks. I like the way it drives. And let's not forget, the ID.4 will start local production in Chattanooga soon. And once Chattanooga starts up, they claim $35,000 price on the mid-spec battery pack. So we won't just get the big 74 kilowatt hour pack. We'll get the 50-something kilowatt hour pack, 50, can't even remember off the top of my head. But I've already reviewed that battery pack in an ID.3 in Europe, and it's stellar.
So next up is the Mustang Mach-E, which was such a controversial car when it came out. And I think the more I spent time with it, the more I liked it. But I still see its weaknesses, as you've noted, especially with its performance driving. And that starts at $43,895, again, for rear-wheel drive, base car. Have you experienced it in the base car at all?
Never driven the small battery pack.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious to see how that goes. But as a car, it's fine. As a performance driving machine, it has its limitations unless you go like GT performance, which still isn't peak performance if you ask pretty much.
Good suspension, good brakes in that one. It's just the powertrain that's lacking for real heavy duty stuff, but for normal people, it's fine.
Yeah, still shreds. It's like getting to that level of being like, okay, I can call it a Mustang.
Yeah, but you like need to get the Max 1 for it to like have livable suspension, in my eyes
Yeah, I
for
agree.
me.
It was amazing how different the GT versus GT performance was, and those GT performance wheels are stunning.
Yes.
I do like the looks of the car in most cases, but yeah, that's relatively affordable again.
Great value, actually, for those who are not driving enthusiasts or care about the small tactile inputs of things or care about performance driving, which is what Mustang should be about, but I get people buy it for other reasons. Then very good, and I could never buy one over an ID.4 personally in the lower trims.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But intriguing car, has again good storage space and everything. Does have a decent frunk.
Yeah,
Um,
big front trunk,
good glass roof, and
but
the
not in the base one.
oh, that's right, yeah. So I don't know.
I
um,
see some base ones rolling around on those stock wheels, and I'm like, ooh, those are bad. Those
yeah,
whatever wheels they put on that thing make it look so weak.
I would have to get aftermarket wheels immediately, unless I got the GT Performance.
I
Um,
really hope Drew starts making some Martians for that thing.
really should, because I'm seeing Mustang Mach-E's everywhere. I'm on a road trip
Yep.
right now through the Midwest, and I'm seeing them everywhere, even out here.
Yep. Same here. Filled up our town, filled up LA. I guess the appeal is it's American, it's well priced, and it's an electric car. And for a lot of people, that plays a massive impact.
Yeah, nice big screen if you like big vertical screens. But yeah, the next one up is the sister to the EV6, bit more expensive, starting at $44,000, is the Hyundai IONIQ 5. That's the SE trim, and it's again a totally decent car. EGMP platform again. It's really similar. I guess pick a styling preference and interior feel. They differ in a few ways, but our friend Zach has the SEL, so a bit step
Middle
up,
spec.
middle spec. But it's again a stellar car, and I'd say a pretty darn good value.
So the a Hyundai Ioniq 5 is how much more than the EV6?
$3,100. So we should note the Hyundai Ioniq 5 hasn't yet, I guess, released the smaller battery rear wheel drive, which is the direct comparison to the V6 Lite that we talked about earlier. Now, when that comes out, it's supposed to start at 39.9 ish, which undercuts the EV6 slightly. The EV6 is pitched as the slightly sportier brand, like they're going to have the EV6 GT pretty soon here. But that's interesting undercut. Now I'll believe it when I see it because everything we know is hiking prices gradually. But for now, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 comes in at 44,000. But in the future, we should get one basically compared to the EV6. So this was interesting because this does undercut the EV6 wind rear wheel drive, although it's the same battery pack, same drivetrain. So you get the bigger range, possibly the biggest range, I guess, because it's the bigger battery with the least amount of things going on, and that's still undercutting that $45,000 line, which Kia doesn't quite do.
Right. So Ioniq 5, in my opinion, is the one to have between the sister cars of EV6, Ioniq 5, and GV60 on the eGMP chassis that we've spoken about. I've driven every configuration of the car from SE to SEL to limited. I think the limited is a lot of money and like worth it if you want a luxury car. But if you're just looking for inexpensive, more transportation, you can't go wrong with the base car. Cloth seats still looks awesome. Still get the pixel theme everywhere. I already have a full trim comparison of all three of these lined up next to each other. Great owners we met in Connecticut. You can, run through all of the different ones. Hopefully that's helpful. Can't recommend this car enough. It's the right size. Huge charging speeds. This is the first time we're coming up on a car that charges at over 200 kilowatts on this list. And man, they're awesome. The nice thing is on the standard and the SEL, dealers are not charging over sticker in certain areas. There's a great dealer in North Carolina that was doing at sticker. They had like 80 of them for sale. And so I would not pay over sticker for either of those two trims. There's such a limited number of the top spec, I think called limited trim, which I think Hyundai really messed up on their ordering books. I think they ordered the car to the traditional Hyundai buyer, which is probably leaning more towards lower trims. but there's a lot of conquest electric vehicle enthusiasts that wanted the car that want maxed out spec on that thing. And I think they totally missed the boat on it. So can't recommend even the base trim enough. It's an awesome car, worth every penny at 44K.
Yeah, great car. And then we're basically going to step just above our original $45,000 cap, because everyone in the comments is being like, where's Tesla? Tesla's right here. $46,990 is the Tesla Model 3. So as everyone knows, Elon's original plan was a $35,000 Model 3 for the masses. That didn't exactly happen.
It did.
It did. It was really hard to get it.
They made it so they had the standard range and the standard range plus, and they basically software limited a standard range plus to have like no functionality, no fog lights, no heated seats, nothing. And then down the line, you were able to software open up the standard range to the standard range plus, which I think as they hit the used market and they cycle back through Tesla, they've been upgrading them. So I don't know if I've ever seen a standard $35,000 Model 3, but they were able to fulfill orders. People were able to buy them. And, this is a bit over our cap, but that's the thing with crazy rising prices. Tesla doesn't have a dealer network. This is the first car we've spoken about that has direct sales to the consumer. And, dealerships have been marking up cars to offset the crazy amount of demand and the crazy short supply. Tesla just has to do this naturally based off of the cycles that happen. So I do not fault them for altering prices throughout. I think that's their business, totally up to them, totally great. The hard thing to know is though, like, what are you going to pay for your car when you decide to order? It's hard to budget it out. Also, no tax credit available, federal tax credit for Tesla, but I've owned 2 Model 3s. That car has to be one of the best performing cars, best driving cars, and with the new LFP pack, best ownership experience of any car we've spoken about today, best charging network, best app integration, and by far worth the extra money if you can swing it.
It's such a good car, but no more mobile connector, right?
Right, yeah. What's up with that? They removed even the charging equipment, which the EV6 doesn't have on this list either.
Yeah, that I forgot to mention that. That's interesting. I think the idea was like, at least their description was, oh well, people aren't using it. I don't know how
Tesla's
people,
excuse.
Yeah, I don't know how many people they surveyed to get that information.
Well, they just use the data from the cars, I'm sure.
Yeah, but it was kind of like a lot of people relate it to Apple removed the charging brick from the iPhone box now, because the idea is eventually everyone has so many chargers. They're trying to save the environment, but it's also a cost-cutting measure for the company itself. That's usually the biggest reason. But then they try to throw in the environmental factors. There's a lot that goes into these decisions, but that's
and environmental is not high up on the list. I'll tell you that much.
Exactly. So no more mobile connector with the Model 3, which is no longer under 45 grand, because it used to be.
The other thing to mention about the Model 3 is when it comes time to sell it, if you are stretching into that car and you just have to bail for whatever reason, you lose your job, you're unstable, whatever happens, that's a car you can quickly move, get out from under it. Vroom, Carvana, they're all paying big dollars for these things, and that's a safe purchase. Might cost you more up front, but it's a safe purchase. We're still unsure of resale values on all of the other cars, especially the Leaf. That's going to take the biggest hit because it won't be able to use a fast charging standard. That car will be limited on a tether to home in just a couple of years. And I don't see any need to build out more CHAdeMO infrastructure. We've got to go all in on CCS.
Yeah. And speaking of infrastructure, that's obviously the thing with Tesla that so many people love is the supercharging network. Although CCS has gotten way better over the years. And it's to the point now where I feel like you or I, especially you, could just go across the country without even thinking about it.
Well, I have.
Yeah, pretty much anything. There's certain stretches here and there that are questionable on CCS. Wyoming comes to mind.
The one closest to home.
They're building that. So, it's all coming. Tesla just was ahead of the game. They had the full network first.
Tesla did it right.
Yeah, so that's about the list. I mean, it's a decent sized list. If we had done this just a couple years ago, this list would have been much shorter because a lot of brands started with premium cars. Tesla comes to mind with Model S and even the Roadster. But yeah, what do you think overall?
Well, I guess I'm left with the impression that nothing's really cheap. And this is why I think we need to do a used buyer's guide sooner rather than later to really help the inexpensive. I'm talking $5,000 electric smarts, $8,000 i3s. Although the used market has just bubbled like crazy, I've been waiting for it to die down, but it hasn't. Here's the thing to keep in mind: the list of top 10 cheapest combustion vehicles in the US for sale right now. The least expensive one, which is going out of production, is the Spark. It's 14.5. The most expensive one, number 10, is the Nissan Sentra at $20,635. We're talking base MSRP, which has been the conversation here. So even the 10 cheapest gas cars don't even come near the Nissan Leaf. We're still talking a whole federal tax credit away. And so electric cars are expensive. They are still for those that are lucky enough and privileged enough to be able to experience them. And it's going to still be some time for them to come down. However, if you look at it from the average price of a new car being somewhere in the $40,000 range, there's still plenty of electric options under the average transaction price of a new car for sale. And that is a great thing. So it's making progress. We need more inexpensive options that are desirable, not just crap on, wheels. We want good electric cars, and that will come. And I think, honestly, the highlight of the list for me is the F-150 Standard, the Pro. Standard battery, dual motor, crazy truck, loved it. But again, you just won't be able to buy one. Someone will be able to, but not many.
Yeah, that one really jumps out, and I think it is the only. So the Tesla was just over 45, but that's the only all-wheel drive one on the entire list.
Right.
It just really stands out as it is, and I think it's going to be a benchmark everyone else needs to now live up to. And like you said, as time goes on, we will have a lot more used EVs on the market. Hopefully that market settles down, but stay tuned for additional guides and conversations like this. Let us know in the comments what you think, what things we may have missed, or how things progress, because this video will stay live and things will change. And so feel free to leave comments and have fun in there.
It'll be fun to look back on this in 10 years.
Yeah. Yep. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one very soon.